love to start with Ivar and Floris. I thought about introducing you guys, and then I thought, no, I'm not going to do that because you already have a lot of fans here in the public, and second of all, I think your story is worth telling yourself. So thank you so much for being here today with us, and I would like to give the floor to you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Manuka and the DBA team for the opportunity for us to tell our story today, and thank you, Pace, very much for your interesting and very inspiring story about how this building is created. I was listening to you and I was almost thinking, wow, this is one of these difficult stories that we are always eager to learn more from and to document, because it's so inspiring to see what you guys have done in such a great place and how it was actually come together. So thanks for that. We brought some slides and we will flip through them in quite a high pace because we have much more to tell than the time we have. What we're going to do is basically introduce ourselves a bit, and also what made us do what we are doing right now, how we came to this project, how we got started, and what we have done in the last almost 6 years that we were sailing. Yeah. You can keep on going. Okay, so a few words about me. I was trained as an engineer, industrial engineer, and I've been working for corporates in my almost entire professional life. I started out at Ahold, later Ahold Delhaize, the Dutch supermarket chain that was the mother of Albert Heijn. And then I moved on to AkzoNobel. So I've been working there in total for 19 years in all kinds of corporate roles. Also operational finance project manager. My last job was sustainability manager at AkzoNobel in Amsterdam. And that was a fascinating and very insightful time. At the same time, I was a sailing instructor. I've been sailing since I was a little boy, and I've been loving sailing all my life. The boat you see on the left, the yellow boat, is the little yacht that my parents owned. This picture was taken in about 1980 something. I remember we had great family holidays on that boat, and it learned me at a very young age how great it is to be out in the water and to basically, enjoy nature from a holiday perspective. And the picture on the right is the Muiderslot, medieval castle, very famous in the Netherlands. And I remember that as a little boy, we had a tour in that castle, and the guide at some point said, okay, this is the toilet, and all the human waste is being dumped in the moat, the canal, the slotgracht around the castle. And people were unaware of that contamination, but then drank the water, they became ill. And it was one of the reasons why people didn't really live very long in the Middle Ages. And I remember as a boy, I was thinking, that's not very smart. Luckily, thanks to science and the microscope and the germ theory, we learned about that and we moved on as a society. Now we no longer do that. But if you look to one of the biggest challenges of our times, the climate is basically changing as a result of a similar process. We are dumping the emissions from our energy system into the atmosphere, which then responds in a negative way that now threatens humanity. The picture on the right is from NASA. They measured the for the audience, the picture on the right, picture from NASA is showing a graph of the sea level rise. So it's about 30 centimeters compared to pre-industrial level, and it's accelerating. And this is just one of the negative effects, obviously, of the climate crisis that we're in. And another topic that is close to my heart is the food supply. So the picture on the right is taken, is from a United Nations environmental program report, and the areas in red show the soils, the agricultural soils that are so degraded that it's more and more difficult to produce food, and that is partially caused by the way we produce food, the overriding industrial system which uses synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and we basically became addicted to that external finite supply. So basically by agriculture, the way we mostly do, we are jeopardizing the future of our own food supply. And these are just two themes that I got worried about.
Yes, he was really depressed when I met him.
No, well.
I come from a very different background. I was trained as a lawyer. I worked for different channels, and before that, a little stint at Foreign Affairs. So I mention this because both of them have links with the other two of the other speakers tonight. I was in a corporate environment, but really my passion was in human rights. So I left the corporate law firm after a while and wanted to do something more socially relevant with my time. I set up an agency that helped human rights organizations or other NGOs get free legal advice. That was fulfilling. At the same time, I was looking for more, and I met Ivar and had actually really gotten to a point where I wanted to see more of the world again. The flags have disappeared, but the letters are still there. I lived in many different countries before I studied in the Netherlands, and that idea and that experience really gave me the insight that we can learn from other cultures. We can learn from how they're doing things abroad, and I wanted to bring that back into my life. Yeah, next one. So as I said, I grew up in Switzerland, and anybody who's been there will tell you it's very clean. When I then moved to the Netherlands, I saw that picture of somebody. I actually saw that, and it hurt me. How can you just throw rubbish out into the street? And it's not. And I thought it's not going away. This is contaminating our living space, and most of the stuff doesn't ever go away. Instead, it ends up in waterways, then goes to the ocean, and contaminates not just the water, but also the fish living in the water, and basically our food supply as well. So that's something that came from my Swiss upbringing, so to say, to be very conscious about the environment. Another thing that's more sort of from my human rights background is that I care about justice, and in a way social justice as well, social inequality. And these pictures we included here because they show what we actually saw in almost the same area in the Mediterranean, both of these pictures. The huge differences between great wealth by one person. This is the biggest sailing yacht in the world, the A. And on the other side, African refugees trying to get a better life in Europe. And it really got to us because you see on the one hand that you cannot achieve sustainability if resources are congregated in one place. This is one individual taking so much of sort of his fair, more than his fair share. Whereas on the other hand, there are people just trying to survive, and they're not thinking about sustainability either, because all of their thoughts are, how can I get my food and how can I be free and safe? So unless we tackle social inequality, we can't tackle sustainability for our planet and our society either.
Yeah, and then we didn't even talk about the biodiversity crisis and all kinds of other nasty pollution, deforestation. Because I think more and more people become aware of that. So we felt it's not our job or task to explain what's going wrong. We need to find a way out of this. And the quote that this quote, we did come up with it ourselves. Actually don't know who owns it. It's not us. But I thought it's brilliant because it basically says, humanity, we might be selfish, we might be resistant to change or cynical, but we're not suicidal. We're going to wake up and we're going to do something about it. And the worse the situation gets, the more people actually start noticing and start doing something differently. And that's exactly the right way. I believe there's a lot to do.
From that thought that there is more to do, and from our backgrounds, we combined that and thought, okay, how can we contribute? How can we shine sort of a light on these good examples. And that's how our project started. Ivar was already living on a sailboat, and I wanted to see more of the world again as well. So we thought, what if we go out there and look for these solutions and show that people are already doing great things that can help, transition our society in different fields to a more sustainable way of doing things.
Yeah, so we didn't really know what we would find. There was a lot of uncertainty involved here. But we did know one thing. We needed a good boat.
Yes.
And before we're going to do that, we want to share this with you. The definition that's on the slide is kind of what we think is sustainability. There's many definitions, but it has to do with doing things in a future-proof way that's replicatable for everyone. And obviously, there's lots of thinking going on in all kinds of organizations throughout the world on sustainability. And the most comprehensive framework we come across, and I also work with them in my last job, is the SDGs, the so-called Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations. So they came up with these 17 goals that cover the entire spectrum of sustainability, from ecological to social and economic issues. So it's a great framework, but at the same time it's also a bit academic, and it's sometimes difficult to kind of find the practicality that relates to that. So we thought there's an opportunity for us to look for real life examples and then link them back to which sustainable development goals are being helped by this initiative.
So that became the framework, but now the tool was going to be the sailboat. And it was Ivar's boat already when I met him. Ivar bought the boat in 2004 when it was already almost 40 years old. But it was still in a good condition, good enough for Ivar's dream always to sail around the world, but it needed a lot of work.
Well, the picture here is when it was finished. Yes. Before we got this point, this is probably the low point. We had to do a lot of repairs on the steelwork, on the interior, the sail, so we had a lot of work. But it was also very fulfilling. This was all like in the weekends and in the holidays. Other people went sailing or went skiing or whatever. We just went work on a boat again.
Yes, this is within a year of me meeting Ivar. He dragged me into this project. But we got a chance.
Yeah, we got a chance to redo the boat and build up from scratch. And one of the things we put in is stone wool, 6 centimeter thick insulation between the hull. This is the steel hull from inside the white paint and the woodwork. So we thought energy is important. We need to insulate the boat. And we also got like a mini cosmos of self-sufficiency. How to do energy. Well, obviously we have solar panel, we have 2 more than this one, we have a wind generator, and we have batteries. But Roland will probably tell a lot more about that later. But it's a system we use on the boat, and it works very well. And we also have a little wood stove to avoid using the diesel heater, which we hardly ever use.
And finally, this is Ivar in front of our water maker. So from salt water we can make drinkable water with a desalination device. And as Ivar said, it's really our own little cosmos, but it's also a metaphor for really the earth, because our resources are very limited, like our Earth's resources, and we have to be very conscious how much we produce and how much we can use. We can only use what we produce sustainably.
Yeah, but the great news is that all these systems are off the shelf, so it's already there. It's just, and of course there's technological development in that, which is great, but the basic principles are already there. We just have to pull the pieces together.
Now, this is a map of what we've done so far. We actually left in 2016, so 6 years ago, and in those 6 years, I'll show you because it's kind of small. We started in the Netherlands and went north first, knowing that there would be great examples in Scandinavia for us to document. And then finally we went south and we were in the Shetlands, and first spent a whole year in the Mediterranean before setting course to South America, across the Atlantic Ocean. And we went the traditional route, so to say, before the Panama Canal was there. We went south and then around the Cape Horn, more or less, up the Chilean coast and across the Pacific. And we arrived here in New Zealand 1.5 years ago and have been stuck more or less because the next countries where we want to sail to have been closed until recently. And on that route, these are all the projects we have described as sustainable solutions. So everywhere we go, we look for great examples, be it in the field of energy, in the field of transport, or even how people act with each other, interact in their community with each other, and we describe those. And we've now had 459 of them on our website. We're not going to have time to show them to you all. They're all there on the website with articles and little videos as well. But we'll show you some highlights, and we'll start with the sexiest one of all, insulation. Pace also mentioned it, and I see it here as well with the double glazing on the wall. We went to see the company that produced the insulation for a boat, more or less, Rockwool, in Denmark. And we wanted to show this example because it's a business example, it's a government example, but it's also an example of what people can do themselves. And it's a business example because it's a business that went into the business of insulation, and they have a business case with sort of a sustainable business. At the same time, it's a government story because it took for them it's a good business because the government in Denmark is imposing very strict regulations to new buildings that they have to be well insulated. And they helped also draft laws, to what is achievable according to the newest technologies, etc. And thirdly, it's really about the individual making that choice, or businesses, what they do with their business properties. It's their choice of how they use energy. Because in the end, the energy that you save with good insulation, for example, you don't have to produce. So it's a very important sort of realization, is we don't have to go more and more. No, we can start by reducing what we need.
And the energy we do need, which could be considerably less than we use today, there are renewable ways of generating that. And we could document the story of wind turbines everywhere, but we chose Samso, a Danish island, for two reasons. One, Denmark is a world leader in wind energy, and they are having a great business there on it. And the second thing is this island, Samso, had a very interesting approach to putting up that wind energy, because they pulled together as a community. Everybody pitched in and bought some shares in a local company that then together decided where these ugly wind turbines needed to be positioned, because nobody was actually interested in having them close. But they managed to do that because they all got a share in the energy and the financial profit. So, because so many wind energy projects are having trouble because of the lack of community support. Because not long after Samso, we sailed to Shetland Islands in Scotland, and then people were protesting the wind turbines, and we learned that because they were not part of the project. It was a London firm that was building all that and extracting the energy and the money, and the people were literally feeling they were living in a sacrifice zone. So we documented the Samso story because it's a great synergy between how the community and the business community work together to make it work. And another solution that we highlighted here, because we thought it could be relevant also for New Zealand, is one of the issues, of course, when you build wind turbines is that it's intermittent. So sometimes there's no wind, but you do need power, so where do you get it from? And this little island in Spain is one of the Canary Islands, El Hierro. They come up with a solution to, you can see wind turbines here in the back, there's the trade wind, there's a lot of wind there, but not always enough to match the demand on the grid. So they come up with a solution to pump excess wind energy up in a mountain lake, and then they could run it down with hydro turbines to power the grid when needed. And this is a very smart solution on an island, but here in New Zealand you guys already have so much hydro, which could serve as a buffer. Anyway, so if you put up more solar and wind energy in New Zealand, which you can use directly if there's demand, but if there's not enough, you can then open the gates for hydro, so you save a lot of water in the lake. So, but this is a solution that works very, very well in
It's like a
Spain.
giant battery.
Yeah.
And then once you have sustainable energy, renewable energy, what do you do with it? And one thing we did see in Norway was not just a lot of electric cars. You could borrow this car to drive around. This was 2016 still, when there weren't as many as there are now. But also the ferry was the first electric ferry that in the world for big passenger cars. So they really used their big amount of hydro energy, about 98% of Norwegian energy is hydro energy, to stimulate the transition to electric transport. And we're not here promoting electric cars necessarily, because also there we say, first reduce your use, share cars, use public transport, but if you can, use the electricity to electrify your transport.
Yeah, the great thing about these electric ferry, and this is a Tesla that they were kind enough to lend that car for the weekend. It's okay. It's zero carbon from, let's say, a user phase, but is this sustainable? I mean, is there enough material on the planet to build 8 billion Teslas for everyone? I don't think so. So we have to be even smarter than this. Maybe for shorter trips, we could go Dutch. I mean, there's a system from back home. In Amsterdam, we just biked everywhere, and I had to explain to my international colleagues at the office that we don't need helmets in the Netherlands to get around on a bike. But to have a biking infrastructure like Amsterdam or any Dutch city, basically, it's not easy. It's like chicken and egg. Everyone here who have tried riding a bike in Auckland probably will recognize that that's not safe. There's no bike lanes. Where do you go? The people in the cars don't know what to do. I just spend my life on a bike. But if you don't have infrastructure, you don't have bicyclists. And if you don't have bicyclists, then you don't have infrastructure. And then it took Amsterdam a long time to figure that out. But in the end, they got it right. So we also made a story very early on in our trip about how the Dutch created the cycling infrastructure. And I think this is a very smart urban transport system that we haven't seen anywhere else outside Amsterdam, Copenhagen. So there's still a long way to go in many places.
Now for something completely different, which is more about reducing inequality. We went to Spain, to the Basque country, to the town of Mondragon, and visited the largest cooperative in the world. It's actually a conglomerate of 100 cooperatives that together form a cooperative as well. And what's so fascinating there is that all the employees can become co-owners of the company. One of the cooperatives is, for example, the big supermarket chain, Eroski. Even the lady at the checkout, she can become a member of the cooperative and thus share in the profits of the company, but also co-decide about the way the company is going, what they do each year with the company's profits, etc. The cooperatives among each other, if one of them does not do so well, the others step in to help. One went bankrupt, and all the employees, except 3, I think, were placed within the other cooperative. And what's very remarkable, this is the 7th largest company in Spain. And the CEO earns about 6 times more than the least paid employee, which is the lady at the register at the supermarket, who earns 15,000 euros a year. It's 1.5 times minimum wage. So the CEO earns, of the 7th largest company in Spain, earns less than $100,000 euros a year, which I think no other CEO here in the Netherlands would get out of bed for. Yet there it works. It's all about equality. We're in this together. We co-own this company, and we decide where the company is going. Do we reinvest in the company if maybe the profits weren't as great, or do we pay out someone to the members? They have schools that work that way as well, banks. So our guide for the day, he said, do I earn a lot of money? No, but am I happy? Yes. Because I know everybody in this village is profiting from the company that's here. It was a very, very moving story, I thought, and it's such a nice way to show how corporations can also be run.
Especially for me, being used to the quarterly capitalism model from my thought it was quite an eye-opener. But the same principle applied to the next example, so we're going to move to the food quite quickly. Do we need fertilizer, synthetic fertilizer and agri-poisons to grow our food? The good news is no. So if we run out of it, we're not going to die out of hunger. There's plenty of ways to grow food together with nature and to maintain biodiversity and to not use all these external inputs. We came across quite a few examples, but we're going to talk a bit about this one in Brazil. Not only because it's a very smart agricultural system, so it relies on lots of different plants put together, so there's like a equilibrium in biodiversity and there's no pests eating the harvest or something. And that's been done with support from the Agricultural University in Brazil that we went on a tour with. So the main crop of these farmers was coffee, but they also have banana, papaya, corn, and a whole lot of other things. So they do that primarily to create a agricultural system that doesn't need any external inputs, but also to be able to live off their own farm, because the land here used to be the rundown wasteland from a huge coffee farm. So the way Brazil typically works, you cut down a piece of native forest, you take out the valuable wood, you burn the rest, you plant your monocrop, you spray your coffee trees for 20 years until it's all dead. And then it's wasteland that you can then sell to these poor farmers that put their money together and work as a cooperative. And then they regrew this wasteland back into this healthy food forest with using natural methods. But it also provided these families, and some of them came from the slums from Rio de Janeiro back to this land and actually had a very dignified life as a family. Working this land, owning it, also eating from it themselves, so they're not overly dependent on the world coffee price. And because they got the certification in order with help of the university, they got a premium for their coffee, which also helped. So this was such a great story, we thought, because it tackles so many problems in a country like Brazil at once. It deals with the social inequality and the slums, and it also deals with the ecological side of the agricultural system.
And as a consumer, of course, you have an important role to play, you privately or even what you procure as a business, what you buy. So here you can choose, you buy natural coffee, for example, but also, and this is an example from French Polynesia, where do I buy my things? Do I buy them at the market or in the supermarket? Where a lot of the things, so when we reached French Polynesia after a long trip across the ocean, a lot of people were very happy to see the big supermarket again from Carrefour, the French chain. But a lot of the food there is imported. And when you buy from there, the profits go elsewhere. Whereas if you go to the market, you buy it from the small farmers, what's in season. And the money goes straight to the people. So there is a very easy way to support local communities, but also small-scale farms. A lot of the farms actually are family farms around the world. And this was a nice example when we visited the farm, that they said we started the farm when I was pregnant, and I didn't want to spray poisons on my food that I was going to eat and my baby was going to have. So a lot of the small-scale farms, they don't have money for the fertilizer or for the pesticides, and they don't want to use it. So you're also, in many instances, supporting a more sustainable way of farming. Diverse.
Even if they don't always have the certification in place, because that's also quite costly for small farmers to get the organic, official organic certification.
Yes, I want to have the non-organic pay for a non-organic certificate. That's more or less painful. But then the other choice you make is, of course, what do you eat? And we were in Argentina and Uruguay. We visited both. They have fights among everything with each other. But one of them is, who is the meat king? Who eats the most meat? Which country? And Argentina or Uruguay always win. Either one of them is number one. But even in Buenos Aires, so the capital of the meat-eating country, there were a lot of vegan and vegetarian restaurants. Plant-based food is up and coming, and we visited a few of them and interviewed them, like, why is this such a big trend? And for a lot of the customers, actually, it was health-based, so they recognized that too much meat is not really good for them. Some other people were motivated by animal health issues, how we treat animals, and for others it was really ecological as well. Like, this is for our planet. It's out of scale with the amount of meat we're eating and all the food we need to produce to feed the animals. So I don't know if you're aware, but we're cutting down forests to grow soy to then transport to Europe to feed livestock in Europe.
Yeah, so there's a lot of improvements to make the food system just by being conscious about your diet and making more plant-based choices, which makes it much more easy for farmers to integrate that into a natural farming system.
So that's part of our story, all the sustainable solutions. But another
we could go on for a long time.
But we also, the other part is failing, and and this is really sort of, it integrates our story, because we see both things when we sail. We see beautiful things, but we also see horrific things happening. And we'll show you a little bit from maybe the most difficult part of our trip, but also maybe the most beautiful part of our trip, which was Patagonia. On the Argentinian side, it's Argentinian Patagonia, very dry. On the other side is Chilean Patagonia, with lots of mountains, lots of rain. And not many boats go there. So you get to places like this. This is actually named Staten Island, which is here, named by Dutch seaman from Hoorn. And it's also Cape Horn, after Staten-Generaal.
And our boat is in the left corner.
Oh yeah.
So it's huge, and there's nobody. So you're surrounded by pristine nature. Nobody gets there except by sailboat, and you feel tiny, and you see the beauty really of nature, how it's been forever. You see wildlife right next to you, penguins, sea lions, and you see glaciers coming right into the waterways. And this is the same as when Darwin sailed through on the Beagle in the 1800s. So,
except for one thing.
yes,
Glaciers.
exactly. So the glaciers are still there. Here we're sailing in front of a glacier. But if you look carefully, our pilot book, so when you sail, there are like lonely planets for sailors, and they explain where you have to be careful. And one of them said, be careful, you get ice, big chunks of ice coming from the glacier when you sail into this towards the glacier. And we didn't have any ice in the water. And then if you look carefully here, we saw there's a beach. So the glacier no longer reaches the water.
The boat is at the very,
We are
very far.
anchored here, and it's receding so much that and this pilot was a few years old. And it makes you realize how vulnerable, and this is an area without humans, but it's feeling the effects, of course, of climate change. So a lot of the ice is melting.
But if you're there and you're in the middle of nowhere and you realize that all the fresh water that's melting is contributing to the problems in the low-lying areas, then you feel an enormous weight on your shoulder, because you're kind of in limbo. You feel, oh, this is great, we see this glacier, but then you see, oh yeah, but it's shrinking, and it's, some glaciers melt faster than others, but it's like a worldwide trend. So you also feel like a responsibility. We're probably the last generation that can prevent this from getting completely out of hand.
And something similar we saw in French Polynesia. Kathleen, you will recognize this is an uninhabited atoll in French Polynesia that are really, it's some reef, some plants, and that's it. And around it are beautiful whales. We saw wonderful fish, but also on the beach, especially the ocean-facing side, a lot of washed-up plastic is a road. I mean, these are already filled from 2 meters. It's full of toothbrushes, slippers, a lot of fishing gear, bottles, and this is in the middle of the Pacific. Still, there's beautiful coral, luckily, but also dead coral. And this is, we went to speak to an organization, and this is really the biggest factor here is climate change. It's human use of the area as well. Whereas coral has such a very, very important role to play, not just for regulating the climate, but also for coastal communities, to prevent the sea taking the coast away. So the organization we met were the coral gardeners. So even there's young people doing something, and that gives us hope. They set up this project where they take pieces of good coral that they know this is fast-growing, strong coral, and they cut off a little bit. They transport it to their garden, because this is one of their gardens, and then let it grow there, and then they replant it in places where the coral has died. It's a lot of work, but this is set up by young people who are concerned about the state of the coral.
And it was a more, in French Polynesia, and we just met them like coincidentally, like that happens a lot. We just look for things, and then you hear about it, and then you get to talk to them, and then you realize, oh my gosh, there's like 15 youngsters on that island that started this NGO, and they get some donations going, and they really make an impact. They showed us like what they've been doing and how many coral reefs are already regrowing. So it can be done.
We'll go through the next ones a bit quicker, but we include them because we're in New Zealand. So some beautiful examples we found in New Zealand. One of them is we visited a company called Agri-Sea. They make fertilizer from seaweed that has washed up on beaches. They give coastal communities in the far on the east coast or far away that have no jobs really. Jobs to collect the seaweed, and from that they have a natural fertilizer. Beautiful example.
Well, the seaweed is being dried and fermented into, like they call it, biostimulants. So it's used in lots of different agricultural practices. They claim they work with more than half of the New Zealand wine producers.
Yeah.
So the grapes get more healthy. They need much less synthetic fertilizer and pesticides. And this is a great story that we got here in New Zealand.
Another one, and this is a bit what we hear as well. The tiny houses are big in New Zealand, and it is sustainable for many reasons. You're using much less material, but also you are bringing sort of your life down to simplifying your life. What do I really need? And this was a beautiful example because this tiny house was built with recycled materials, so it's a bit like here with water collection and everything that you see had a different purpose before, and solar panels, of course. But it's really the story of the lady who lives there.
Yeah.
So I'm a happier person really. I have less expenses, so I live debt free. I have to work less, and I can do other things with my time.
Yeah, please go see this video that we have on our YouTube channel because Eva, the lady who built and who lives in this house, she's just so spot on the way she explained it, and it just radiates from her. We can't really reproduce that, so you have to check out and hear her story. But
it's really, that's a mindset. And the last one that we want to show is also really a mindset thing and also a New Zealand thing, and that's an example based on Maori belief really, and it's giving rights to natural phenomena. So this is the Whanganui River, but also the Te Urewera Park here in the North Island as well, and Mount Taranaki. They all have a special status now in law after long deliberations with the government that has been recognized. And I guess it's a Western way of recognizing the special status is to give them rights like a legal person, like a company. But it's really about how do we treat nature? How do we look at nature? Do we look at it as something that we can just use as a resource and appropriate? Or do we look at it as something separate, something special, something, the way the ladies actually said it was, nature doesn't belong to us, we belong to nature. A totally different way of looking at it. If we belong to nature, we are there to pass it on to future generations. We have to make sure it stays healthy, and we only take what it can regenerate. We don't pollute it. You know, our children will have to live off this land as well and live in harmony with nature. So it's a beautiful sort of way of thinking that I think we in the West have lost, and because we've come to see nature as resource that we can exploit. So as we said, we have many more. We have little stories about them. We have little postcards there on the little table, just to get an idea how many there's documented in different themes. And we put them on our website and on our YouTube channel, and we have an Instagram account and other social media. We make little videos, and if you want, you can become our patron, and for a few dollars, per video, you can support us. Because our goal is really to get the message out. There are great ways of doing things. Just follow these great examples. In every article we write, we end with a little column saying what you can do in your own life based on this example. So finally, we leave you with our future plans. A lot of people have asked, how long have you been here? What are you doing next? And it's actually time almost for us to say goodbye, because Australia is open, New Caledonia is open. Our families can't wait to get us back. It's been 3 years since we last saw them. So we want to sail on, but on the way, keep collecting more stories. Also work more with partners. Partners have helped us get our stories out there. So we write for magazines. We've written for a bank for their online story. We've given presentations. We're going to give another one. That help us spread these wonderful examples and reach as many people as possible. It's difficult in these days with so much on a timeline or on the internet to get your sort of foot through the door. So we really appreciate your help as well. If you can follow us or share our stories.
Yes. And to answer your question, Luca, about what I would like to get out of this meeting, other than meeting all of you and learning all your exciting backgrounds and how you ended up in this great country. I really hope that with our presentation we were able to give a bit of an overview that sustainability is more than eco. It has to do with the way we work together, the way we organize ourselves, the way our economy is run, and of course the way we treat nature. And I really hope that you guys got a bit better insight in how these sometimes vaguely defined SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, could really translate into actions that we've seen across the world, that is replicated. It's not rocket science. We're being confronted with all these challenges, but it's not like we don't know what to do. There's plenty of good stuff happening. Is this a complete set of solutions that we presented here? No, of course not. There's still plenty of things that we haven't documented, or maybe that it doesn't even exist a solution for. But I think the path we're on is important. We need to get going with changing things for the better, and along the way we have to figure out more things that work well. So we honestly hope that we got you hooked on a bit more into the beautiful inside of sustainability, and hopefully the only future that's worth living.
Because it's all hands on deck.